Oh, hello. Can we please talk about UFC Vegas 50, all the terrible bets that I put down on that? Can we also have a quick chat about what's been going on in the world of MMA news? And I'm going to be running through that, having a bit of a laugh at the expense of whoever I can find, really, looking at some hilarious MMA-themed memes, as is always entertaining. And I'll also be answering a fan question for Uga. Uga has got a question regarding who I rank best, in terms of overall accomplishments and contributions to the world of MMA between Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar. So I'll be going into some details because I've got some opinions. I've got some damn opinions on that. But yeah, if that sounds good, then stick with me for the Burt Locker episode 110. So let's start off with the UFC Vegas 50 recap. Pereira, he looked really good actually. He took some shots, but Silva is just a very good striker in his own right. I've seen a lot of people going, oh, he couldn't, he's never going to beat a top 10 middleweight if he's getting hit by the likes of Silva. It's like, well, by that logic, then Adesanya never should have gotten close to a title shot. Did you forget in his second UFC fight, he went to a split decision with Marvin Vettori? Not being funny, but like literally Pereira is more or less going exactly the same rate that Israel Adesanya did. And Bruno Silva is a dangerous striker in his own right. He's made a career of getting into dogfights with guys that have the reach and have the height, because Bruno Silva is undersized for that division. So the fact that Pereira got hit, it makes no difference. In the end, he beat Silva fairly. If I can get my words out, he beat Silva fairly convincingly in the end. So, people saying that performance proves that Pereira is not going to be able to hang with top 10 middleweights are quite frankly out of their minds. Terence McKinney was unlucky, but props to Drew Dober, man. Drew Dober, he weathered that storm, didn't he? Call an ambulance, but not for me. Yeah, that's one of my favourite memes I've been going around this week. It'll be on the meme section of the show in a little while. Khalil Roundtree was so impressive. And what was even more impressive was when Paul Felder said, because basically Roundtree knocked him down to the floor, hit him with some combos, and then kicked him, properly soccer kicked him in the ribs. And yet that's legal, you're allowed to do that. Not many people do though, but he did. Yeah, he went after him like he owed him money, is what Paul Felder said, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. He went after him like he owed him money. Fantastic. I think Marlon Moraes might be done, man. I think he might be done. Look, he just keeps getting starched, and it is really sad to see. And yeah, I mean, I wish him all the best, but I've seen him knocked out too many times now. He needs to either take a break or hang it up. And the main event, honestly, was disappointing. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. That's not how you go about lobbying for a title shot, honestly. I don't think that Ankalaev can get a title shot off the back of that performance. He didn't. It was just one shot. He did enough to win. But at no point did he have Santos in any real danger. In fact, the only fighter that was in danger at any point was Ankalaev when Santos caught him. I think it was in round 2 or 3. It all merged into one boring, dull fight. It was, I get it. It was strategic and they were both kind of tentative, but yeah, I don't know. I wanted to see more than that. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't. Call me a casual all you like. I don't give a fuck. I want some excitement in my fights, and honestly, that was not exciting. So both of those guys need to do better. Yeah, so before I get into the news, I just want to do a quick thank you to all of you guys for watching. If you could also like and subscribe, it would really mean the world to me. It sounds stupid, but it really does. It really means the world. And also, please feel free to send some questions in the comments. As Uga can attest, I do happily answer questions. Whenever I can. Basically, I love talking about this kind of stuff. So for me, any questions are always welcome. Keep them clean where you can, or don't. I don't know. But either way, the comments help. They help the algorithms. And yeah, also I have the Patreon. If you want to support the show over there, please feel free to do so. It's just a good way to support the show. You get early access to the picks and exclusive content. And yeah, it's £1 a month. It's like that's like basically a full fat can of Coke these days. Because if I'm having a sugary soft drink, I'm going to be having a full fat one. If I'm making a bad decision, I'm doing it right. You understand? Understand me? Yeah, you do. You know what I'm about. Anyway, I think that basically Ankalaev has shot down any chance of fighting with Anthony Smith. Honestly, I think that's an exciting fight. I think that's a fight that they probably should make next. Anthony Smith is up there in the division, and yeah, I don't think the Ankalaev that just fought Santos necessarily beats Smith automatically. Yeah, be interesting to see. I don't think Ankalaev should be shooting that fight down because he's not getting a title shot off the back of that performance. Like, to get a title shot, you need to go out there and be impressive. Did he win? Yeah. Was he impressive? I don't think he was, honestly. I expected far more. And Greg Hardy has been released, so that's no real surprise, is it? So it kind of gets me reflecting on what have we learned from Greg Hardy whilst he's been in the UFC. What I've learned is that, honestly, his girlfriend's top game must have sucked, man. Because, I mean, she's letting him push her around. Come on now. You know, we've seen him. He has been exposed. He's got no ground game. So, yeah. See you later, Greg. Best of luck to you. So, let's have a quick look. Excuse me. At the fan question. So, the question is, let me see if I can get the exact question. Where I rank as MMA heavyweights, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, Bobby Lashley, and Brock Lesnar. So, basically, I'm going to be looking at these one at a time, looking at their contributions to the sport, and seeing kind of, I'm going to rank them at the end. So, Ken Shamrock, obviously, absolute legend of the sport. Do you know what I mean? Like, world's most dangerous man. This is why I find it funny, you know, people give him a lot of shit. You got to remember, at one point in time, he was considered the world's most dangerous man. He was a real problem. He won himself a UFC tournament. It was the Super Fight Championship. He beat Dan Severn, UFC 6. He defended that against Chemo with a knee bar. Like, he was just a submission machine. He helped put MMA on the map by going between that and pro wrestling. Because actually, that brings me back to another point, is that people always talk about what does fake ass wrestling have to do with MMA. It's like, well, actually everything. When you look at the history of MMA, like Pride was a wrestling organization before it was a MMA organization. And basically, MMA as we know it kind of stemmed from like the 1960s, where Japanese pro wrestlers would go to actual dojos to see how hard they really were fighting against actual martial artists. So actually, fake ass wrestling has everything to do with mixed martial arts, because actually they're both in the same business. They're both in sports entertainment. Like, people don't like hearing that, but it is true. Because the MMA is entertainment first and foremost. Because if it's not entertaining, people will not watch it. And then, you think the fighter pay is bad now, right? People stop watching. What, you think that's going to go up? No. It's entertainment. Has to be entertaining. So, Ken Shamrock going between like the UFC and Pride and WWF at the time was brilliant, because it was the first time I'd really heard of like the UFC was when I saw that, Ken Shamrock, he's in this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and then that turns your attention to that, and he brought a lot of eyes to the sport. Obviously, he was in the first the final of the tournament. I think it was the final against Hoist Gracie, and obviously Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock were the first ever inductees to the UFC Hall of Fame, rightfully so. Legend of the sport, Ken Shamrock. So, I mean, his career really went off a cliff, though. Let's be fair. I mean, after he lost to Tito twice, he then tried to fight Kimbo Slice, and he lost to Robert Berry in Cage Warriors. Come on, man. Like, and that final fight against Hoist Gracie in Bellator was just a joke. It was, if he hadn't have lost all those fights and kind of, in his career, hadn't taken a severe nosedive, I'd rank him higher than I do. But he is still, make no mistake about it, Ken Shamrock is an absolute legend of mixed martial arts and the UFC, and is rightfully a Hall of Famer. Now, Dan Severn, first of all, what a moustache. Look at the moustache on that dude. Wonderful, right? Best moustache in the game. Actually, probably tied between him and Don Fry, to be fair. It's just the level of competition. Like, not the level, but just the sheer volume. 127 fights, 101 wins, only 19 losses. That's mental. That is absolutely crazy. And he was properly old school. Do you know what I mean? He'd just come out in the black trunks. He'd just try and basically, like, you know, bulldog people and just crush their necks and just beat them up. He was just an old school tough guy. That's what I loved about Dan Severn. He was just an old school tough bastard that would just go in there with his Greco-Roman wrestling and his wrestling credentials, and he would just dominate and beat up on people for the most part. Now, he did lose the UFC, the Super Fight Championship to Ken Shamrock at UFC 6, as I noted before, but he did actually win it back from a split decision at UFC 9. So he is a UFC Super Fight Championship holder. And yeah, I mean, 127 fights, man, that is like Jeremy Horn level crazy, isn't it? Like, that's ridiculous. He won his last fight in 2012, which is great to see. He actually went out on a win. He was still winning regional championships in 2011. Like Elite 1 MMA, he was still winning championships. And he is rightfully a Hall of Famer. Because that's another thing. Like, people always go, what? Because I always talk about Brock Lesnar should be in the Hall of Fame. People are like, oh, you won't ever get a fake-ass pro wrestler in the Hall of Fame. It's like, oh, you've already got one, guys. You already got one. Dan Severn is in the Hall of Fame. He was a pro wrestler. Go check your history. Like, it's all there. It all intertwines. But yeah. Dan Severn, absolute legend, had some great fights, and he was just an old school tough guy. So, Brock Lesnar, for me, Brock Lesnar, like, spoiler alert, I rank him pretty highly for UFC heavyweights and in terms of their contributions to the sport, because arguably, Brock Lesnar was the first real pay-per-view star, like legit pay-per-view star. Right, he was in the second fight that did more than 1 million pay-per-view buys. The only other one before that to do 1 million buys, the first to do 1 million buys was Evans versus Griffin. But once Lesnar won the belt, he did not headline a pay-per-view that did less than 1 million buys. And there is only one fighter that can say that, and his name is Conor McGregor. And I think after Conor McGregor won the belt, I don't think any of his pay-per-views did less than 1 million buys. Same for Brock Lesnar. After he won the belt, when he was the champion, like literally, it was always 1 million buys if he was in the main event, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. And he was doing that back in 2009. Back in 2009. He brought a lot of eyes to the sport, because bottom line is he obviously brought a lot of eyes from pro wrestling, a lot of the casual fans, right? But you need the casuals. You need casuals to get 1 million pay-per-view buys or better. You need casuals. You need them. So stop slagging casuals off. You know what I mean? For me, he did all of that, right? He won the belt. He beat a who's who, really. Because of his name, his fame was a double-edged sword, really. Because, yeah, it got him opportunities that he wouldn't have had otherwise. But it also meant that he only had one easy fight. And that was the one outside of the UFC. He didn't have an easy fight in the UFC. Literally, every single fight he had, like Heath Herring, people forget how highly rated he was when he was coming out of Pride. Heath Herring was very highly touted in Pride. He was seen as being potentially the next big star. And then, you look at the list of people he beat. Randy Couture, Shane Carwin, you know what I mean? Frank Mir. His first fight in the UFC was against a former heavyweight champion. Who else gets that? No, nobody. Do you know what I mean? In his second MMA fight in his career, his second fight, he fights a former UFC heavyweight champion in the UFC. And obviously, yeah, he came up short in that one because he got knee barred. Everyone saw it. But my point is, that's the level of competition he was facing. He never had an easy go. And he only had 9 fights in his career, but he did more in those 9 fights than most do in a 40-fight career. Honestly, he brought more viewers to the UFC. He changed the way people thought about the heavyweight division. He changed the way He's changed what people expected from the UFC, and for it, he was instrumental in paving the way to turning it into a really viable pay-per-view like juggernaut that it is becoming, and that is in large part to Brock Lesnar, and because the fact is he made himself into a brand that was marketable. He turned himself into a brand, and it was a kind of symbiotic, like mutual benefit for both him and the UFC. And both their stocks went through the roof. So, for me, Brock Lesnar should be in the Hall of Fame. He is not currently, but I would think that he is probably going to be, and 100% deservedly so. Because after Brock Lesnar came to the UFC was not the same again. And it was in a large part down to him. I'm not even talking about his fighting ability. Look, at the end of the day, he was good enough to win a title and he was good enough to defend it twice, right? It's that simple. Was he the most well-rounded athlete? No, he wasn't. But what he did was, what he executed was powerful, and what he was able to do was very effective, right? So yeah, for me, Brock Lesnar, for the amount of eyes he brought to the sport, for the amount that he changed the landscape of the UFC, and in some ways MMA, he should 100% be in the Hall of Fame, and that is true. That is what I think on it anyway. And then you also asked about Bobby Lashley. Well, Bobby Lashley, he's, in terms of actual accolades, he's about the same as the Detroit Lions' new fan hotline number, 0800 1-0 1-0 1-0. You know. It's like, come on, man. He's had 17 fights, none in the UFC, 15 wins, but against who? Against nobodies, right? We don't know if Bobby Lashley is a pay-per-view or not, pay-per-view draw or not, because he hadn't been in one. He hasn't been on pay-per-view, right? Lashley is a freak athlete that has done next to nothing in the sport, and I'm not even going to put him on this rankings table because he doesn't deserve to be there with the likes of Shamrock, Seven, and Brock Lesnar. So for me, this is a 3-man ranking. Bobby Lashley doesn't deserve to be there because, with respect, like he could have maybe, if he'd have taken some chances and really committed, gone to the UFC, but he didn't do that, did he? He didn't commit to it. So he ended up fighting nobodies, did nothing, and so he can't even be really compared to the rest of those legends that I went through. So for me, unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, Dan Severn is third because Ken Shamrock finished him in their fight. And also Shamrock, definitely, for me, is ahead of Dan Severn in the way that he brought eyes to the sport and kind of went between pro wrestling. And their impact on the sport, I do believe, Ken Shamrock's was slightly greater than Dan Severn's. But the top of that list is Brock Lesnar. In what he did to change the landscape of the sport, he did more than both Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock. Like, it's probably closer with Ken Shamrock, honestly, because obviously they're in different eras. You know, without Ken Shamrock boosting the profile of the UFC, would it have been an attractive enough proposition to lure the likes of Brock Lesnar over anyway, if that makes sense? It all had to go in. So I'm not diminishing in any way what Ken Shamrock did. But Brock Lesnar was the first legit pay-per-view star. So out of those three, it is definitely Dan Severn third. Unfortunately, no disrespect to Dan Severn, absolute legend, Hall of Famer, rightfully so. Ken Shamrock, Hall of Famer, again, absolute legend. His career kind of nosedived a bit. But Brock Lesnar, he did more for the sport than people like to acknowledge. And he should be in the Hall of Fame. And that is why he is number one on my list. And Uga, I hope that answers your question, or at least gives you some insight into how I think about your question. And then all we've got is Troll of the Week. We're going to take this one home. So, sorry, still suffering a bit from the effects of COVID. So, after seeing how boring that fight was at the weekend, I think there is really only one fight that we want to see. And that is Magomed Ankalaev against Cousin Mose, because obviously I still think that they are the same person. I mean, obviously they're not, but yeah. It's the fight that we all want to see. Based on his performance at the weekend, I am gonna bet on Cousin Mo's. But yeah, anyway, so that was one that I created. And then we obviously have Masvidal and Colby. This one is funny. Poor Masvidal. I promise, just one kiss. And then 2 minutes later, you've got, like, I mean, oh my God, that is some image. The bottom image there, that is some image. I mean, the top image looks damn right sensual and romantic, you know? It looks wonderful. It looks so kind of picturesque. But then the second one is like, whoa, okay, it's getting real now. Getting real now. Guys, no, less of that. But yeah, anyway. Then we've got my favourite one by far, Drew Dober. Drew Dober going from the brink of defeat to pulling out the win. Call the ambulance. But not for me. Yeah. It's a classic. That came out literally minutes after that fight. I found that. And it was brilliant. But yeah, anyways. That's all I've got time for this week. I'd like to say thank you very much for tuning in. I'll be doing my picks for the fights. Is there fights? Yeah, it's UFC London, isn't it? UFC London. I'll be getting those picks in on Friday on the Patreon. They'll be out on Saturday on the YouTube channel. So until then, keep those odds long and those bets terrible.